Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. Today is a big one. It is episode 70, where we are talking Andor. I have been so excited to talk about this show. There's so much to pick apart, and it's honestly a little bit overwhelming, and it feels almost nerve-wracking to cover a show like this because it is just such a gigantic endeavor. Every episode has a million things you could talk about for an hour, so I think that just goes to show about the quality, and it was a big season. They had a lot to wrap up. We will talk about all of it. I hope you are all doing well. We are heading into the long weekend here in Canada, and I'm very excited to have a little bit of a rest and travel this weekend, so that's why I'm filming a little bit early. It is Thursday, May 15th. Busy week. I've been planning my May YouTube video. I cut and filmed a little trailer for it this week. I've been super busy rewatching Andor as well in all of my spare time because I wanted to rewatch episodes 1 to 9 going into the finale on Tuesday night, so I rewatched all of them again, and yeah, we're gonna dive into some good stuff today, but as always, timestamps below if you only want to hear the non-spoiler section. And obviously with TV shows, it's a little bit hard to gauge like what is a spoiler and what's not, because in non-spoilers, if I talk about something that's happening in the finale, that kind of spoils like every other episode, right? So I try to keep it a little bit more thematic and talk about the things that the season is generally talking about, versus in the spoiler section we will, jump into the endings for our characters or where the show leaves them. So all of that good info below, as well as my socials, tons of stuff linked below, but let's jump into the news. All right, well, our first piece of news surrounds the controversy of the rehearsal that Nathan Fielder essentially set up a fake singing show. If you're not watching season 2 of the rehearsal, it's absolutely bonkers. Well, one of the contestants, who apparently is a singer that's, been on The Voice, has like a record deal or something like that, and came out with a statement. Tons of people have theorized that this is actually a hit piece, which maybe we'll talk about in a second, but Variety reported that when Lana Love received an email from her old performing arts school about casting for a new HBO singing competition, she jumped at the opportunity. The New York-based singer-songwriter had previously been a contestant on The Voice and had an album in the chamber, so she thought the series dubbed Wings of Voice, which is Nathan Fielder's fake singing show based in a fake Houston airport, could be the perfect launchpad for her music career. The winner of the show was promised the chance to perform with a Grammy-winning artist, but Love viewed the exposure of being on an HBO series as the real prize. Love flew from her home in New York to Los Angeles 3 times on her own dime for separate auditions and tapings of Wings of Voice, which was filmed on an HBO soundstage in Hollywood. She waited in line with more than 1,000 aspiring singers, performed for judges, and made it to the top 50. But when has HBO ever done a singing competition? You would see Nathan Fielder on set. He was there, no doubt. So would you not clue in of like, oh, who's that guy? And ask someone who is that guy. And when they say Nathan Fielder, you don't Google him and be like, oh, is this all fake or something? Like, I kind of don't have sympathy for anyone that's involved with the rehearsal, because the stuff that Nathan Fielder is doing is genuinely so life-changing and mind-blowing that if he ruins anyone's life, it's for the greater good. He's trying to get at this social experiment and try to understand human nature a little bit more. So, relationships are going to be ruined, lives are going to be ruined, but if it means we can solve American aviation or aviation in general, I'm all for it. Now, as for whether this is a real story or she was maybe encouraged to speak up about this, a lot of people are theorizing that because of Nathan's coming down on Paramount a couple weeks ago for taking down one of his episodes of Nathan For You about Summit Ice and Holocaust awareness, people think that Paramount maybe reached out to contestants or reached out to talent agencies to be like, oh, hey, anybody that was on Wings of Voice, we'd love to chat with you and hear about the legitimacy of it. So people think this is a Paramount hit piece, which I could see it, especially with how pissed off this girl is, Lana Love. She said, I signed up to be a singer, not a lab rat. Many of the contestants are just now finding out that they were essentially extras in an elaborate bit. So she says she spent $5,500 on travel, lodging, and hair and makeup across her 3 trips to LA. And as a vocal teacher in New York, she lost out on nearly $4,000 in canceled lessons. Kind of wild that you would spend that much money to be on an HBO singing show. Like, if you know you couldn't afford it or you're not extremely financially comfortable, then why would you let yourself be a sucker to be a showcase face on an HBO show that's not guaranteeing like a record deal. It's not guaranteeing fame or anything like that. It's like you get to perform with a Grammy-winning artist. Okay, do you know how many bad singers have won a Grammy? I'm struggling to find any sympathy for someone that's been a sucker to Nathan Fielder because he's not forcing anyone to do anything. He is just letting people be a part of his world, and honestly, it's so damn entertaining and insightful and emotional and kind of wild that I'm like, this is all for a greater good. So, sorry, Lana. In another crazy story, HBO Max lives. Max has changed its name back after 2 years. There was HBO, there was HBO Max, there was HBO Go, there was Max and HBO, and now it's back to HBO Max. It's one of the strangest rebranding journeys I've probably ever heard of, ever. And how many other streaming platforms have done this? No one. It is literally just HBO. But to their credit, I will say they have been extremely funny about it on all of their social medias. Like last night before bed, I was watching every HBO Max TikTok that they were posting throughout the day, and it was just them roasting themselves for doing all of these rebrandings. Like it had Selena Meyer in Veep when she comes out with her new haircut, and everyone's like, oh, it looks different. And it was like us after rebranding to HBO Max again. It's a nice change and just absolutely hilarious. But they've been posting tons of videos like that. So I like that they have a sense of humor. And they even posted James Gunn and John Cena, who were filming promos for Peacemaker in August. And they found out midway through filming the promos that it was changing to HBO Max. And James Gunn could not believe it. Neither could John Cena. He was like, okay, well, I'm going to say HBO Max now for all of these promos. Everyone in the room is kind of confused, like, yeah, Carrie Coon, Leslie Bibb, and Michelle Monaghan, is that her name? All three of them were like, wait, wasn't it always HBO Max? And Carrie Coon was like, well, as long as they're employing me, I don't care what they're called. Kind of a wild journey in 2 years, and I think it shows because it is all owned by Warner Brothers, right? Like HBO is owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, same with Max, of course, so it's all under that umbrella. And I think the fact, it's so amazing how a name change indicates how much of a mess the larger scheme is here and how poorly ran things are, that like they can't even, they're not aware of what to do with their own brand, and they are handling it so poorly. I thought it was from like Disbussing Films, the parody account of Discussing Films, but then I saw HBO Max officially posted a photo of the Pope White Smoke coming out with a pigeon nearby of like HBO has renamed itself, and just such a weird marketing journey for this one program. But at the end of the day, I think it's probably for the best because nobody knows what Max is. What is Max? That's not a recognizable name. Versus HBO, you have an HBO program, people are going to tune in because genuinely every HBO show that I have watched has been like 10 out of 10 television. Always good, whether it's Succession, The Rehearsal. There's so many great programs through HBO that you can't really blame them for being like, well, we should really milk the HBO name because that's what's going to draw audiences in, and that's what Warner Brothers needs. They need people watching. All right, in a less than cheery story, Alison Brie and Dave Franco are facing a $17 million copyright suit over their Sundance hit Together, which was apparently a blatant ripoff. So the suit filed on Tuesday alleges that the film is a blatant ripoff of Better Half, a 2023 independent film. The suit claims that Together steals the high concept idea of a couple who find themselves physically fused together, as well as numerous other plot and thematic elements, including a near verbatim reference to Plato's Symposium. So according to the suit, and this is where I think it's kind of damning evidence on Alison Brie and Dave Franco. According to the suit, they were pitched Better Half in 2020, but they and their WME agents turned it down. The producers of Better Half, Jess Jacklin and Charles Beale, heard about Together the day before it screened at Sundance and decided to go watch it. As the audience laughed and cheered, Jacklin and Beale sat in stunned silence, their worst nightmare unfolding. Scene after scene confirmed that defendants did not simply take stock ideas or scenes affair, but stole virtually every unique aspect of Better Half's copyrightable expression. So the lawsuit alleges that the defendants engaged in an intentional scheme to copy their film, and that Brie and Franco rejected the initial offer because they wanted to produce the film themselves and have WME package the project with one of the agency's own writers. Here's where it gets tricky as well. Neon recently acquired the film at Sundance, and it's set to release on August 1st. The distributor is named as a defendant alongside Brie, Franco, and WME, as well as writer-director Michael Shanks. In response, a WME spokesperson called the suit frivolous and without merit. That is a very tough situation because the fact that they were pitched this and almost every story beat is the same, if that is true, I think that's a very damning scenario. And I don't think it's quite like The Holdovers a couple years ago where it was like, wow, look at how many things are similar here. And it was like, there's a younger and an older character. They go for a drive. They have a meal together. Well, that stuff happens in almost every movie. You can't really copyright dinner in a movie. Or it's not like, I don't know, there was a Matt Reeves, the Batman copyright recently that he won because this one guy who wrote a comic, I think, or a story, a Batman story a few years ago, tried to say that the Batman was ripping him off. And it was, this kind of stuff happens in Hollywood all the time. The fact that people try to make lawsuits and be like, oh, well, I had that idea originally. And then when you compare the two, there's kind of nothing in it. But this one, I've also read, like, it was a spoiler and I didn't want to read it on the podcast in case people are interested in watching this. I will still watch the movie, of course, in August, but I was curious what the story beats that are the exact same. And apparently the ending of the film is identical to the original script. Like, that is exactly what they wanted to do. And that's going to be a kind of a wild experience, like going to Sundance and being like, all right, well, let's go see if this movie's similar to ours and it's beat for beat the exact same as yours. Especially you're an independent film and this is Alison Brie and Dave Franco, who are massive stars. Like Alison Brie was on Community, that wrestling show on Netflix, Glow, that was massive. She's done tons of crazy things. Dave Franco is Dave Franco. He's James Franco's little brother. Like, he's a huge actor. Oh man, that's got to be painful going to watch a movie and being like, oh no, our movie is on screen right now and all of our ideas are taken. But who knows? Maybe it'll encourage people that if they did win the lawsuit, then people would go and watch the independent film and maybe they could get a deal. I don't know. I do like a lot of Alison Brie stuff that she does, but if her and her husband are ripping off people, and especially an independent film, you're ripping off an independent film, that's just such a bummer. And I don't know, it's a bit of a letdown. So we'll see where this goes. I think it's going to be a very long and drawn out court procedure, so we will see what happens. But in other news, Denzel Washington, Robert Pattinson, and Daisy Edgar-Jones are set for the Netflix heist film Here Comes the Flood from Fernando Meirelles. I had no clue this was happening. This story broke yesterday and I fell out of my chair. Originally, I was very excited. I was like, oh, this is very cool. Denzel, Daisy Edgar-Jones, Robert Pattinson, my favorite actor of all time. And then I was like, oh, wait, Netflix film. That part really just pulled me straight back down to earth, sat me back in my chair. Ugh, why? Why Netflix? Why? So this is written by Simon Kinberg, who did the original Mr. and Mrs. Smith, a bunch of the X-Men movies, all that stuff. He's doing a new Star Wars trilogy. Film is described as an unconventional heist flick about a bank guard, a teller, and a master thief in a deadly game of cons and double crosses. Kinberg and Audrey Chon will produce for genre films alongside Meirelles, with Samson Mucky executive producing. Does it sound like a bad movie? No, and I'm definitely going to watch it because I love Robert Pattinson, but Netflix movies, oh man, I've been burned by so many Netflix movies, and I hope it doesn't get the Netflix treatment where it's out in theaters for like a week in 4 theaters in North America, and then they dump it on streaming because, as we all know, Ted Sarandos hates theaters, thinks it's an outdated model, which, like, shout out to Ryan Johnson for kind of standing up to Ted Sarandos these past couple weeks and saying, like, no, the theater model's the best. Basically already saying that after this Knives Out movie, he's moving on to something else, and I don't think he'll work with Netflix again. I think he's going to go to a big studio that does theatrical releases, and I hope so. But this is kind of a bummer. I don't know, the people involved, actors-wise, very excited. I love all 3 of the leads, but the writer, Simon Kinberg, I don't know. He's written a lot of really sloppy stuff recently, but I have hope. I think this could be good. I think it's coming out early 2027. It's filming next year. You know me, I love Robert Pattinson and heist movies, considering Good Time is one of my favorite movies ever. So I think it has potential to be a great movie, but the fact that it's Netflix kind of, I don't know, pulled me back down to earth a little bit. But let's dive into our final story of the week. Superman. We got an official trailer yesterday. I did a little video on my social medias, but I still want to talk about it here because, holy dear God, I absolutely loved it. I love this trailer, and way more dialogue, kind of story elements, even though I feel like we don't really know what the story even is of the movie. I feel like they showed so much without showing anything, if that makes any sense. Honestly, it looks fantastic. I think David Cornsweet seriously looks the part. I think my favorite part of the trailer was the interview of Lois Lane and Superman. The fact that she's grilling killing him in this interview and being like, you didn't think through saving these people, you've caused all this international tension. And he's like, people were gonna die. I'm not acting in anyone's interests except the interest of good and doing the right thing, and I'm not representing anyone else's actions. Just like so much good writing, and I love that they're actually writing friction between Lois Lane and Superman. I think that's such a fun thing that we didn't really get recently. Like, obviously, look, it's so hard not to compare it to Man of Steel because that was the last movie, but I think we should set aside the Man of Steel comparisons because that was such a like an outlier of the Superman movies that we've gotten in all time. Like even Christopher Reeves, Brandon Routh, like that was very much Zack Snyder kind of doing his own vision. So I think it's, I don't know, it's more in line to compare it with Brandon Routh and the Christopher Reeves ones instead of the Zack Snyder. It's kind of a pointless exercise. So I think considering like a lot of the time Lois Lane in the Christopher Reeve movies was just kind of very in love with Superman clearly, but like I was surprised Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane coming down on him. But as for all the heroes and stuff like that, the villains first of all look fantastic. Hammer of Baravia, the Engineer, Ultraman, Rick Flag Sr. Nicholas Hoult looks fantastic as Lex Luthor. He looks pissed off, looks like he actually wants to kill Superman and toy with him and ruin his life. But also hero-wise, I really loved Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl. Guy Gardner looks fantastic, and I love actually seeing the Green Lantern powers with his hand flicking the Lex Luthor troopers or whatever. It's just so much of it. I was like, holy shit, this is a comic book come to life, and that's what I want at the end of the day. I'm fine with, oh, let's make this superhero gritty and realistic with Batman, but I think with a lot of other heroes, we don't really need that, especially with Superman, where it's supposed to be hopeful and this elevated, optimistic superhero. That's what I want, and I really got that from this trailer, that it is a human story about optimism, doing the right thing even when there's tons of red tape around you and people trying to get in your way and almost make it like a business type thing and make it bureaucratic of, you know, Clark probably does see the world in like this, you know, rosy way and this rose tinted glasses or whatever, as they say. He still sees like, oh, everyone's good and everyone wants to see good, and he sees that like people don't want to be evil, everyone's good, whereas Lois is like much more of a realist. But it's already at like 6 million views. I think the views just keep on counting. It was #1 on trending yesterday, and I thought it was just a great trailer from start to finish. They really showed all the different character dynamics super well, as well as the powers, and that they're going very comic accurate with the powers. They're not trying to make anyone realistic. As messy as I think Deadpool and Wolverine was, I loved Gambit's powers, that they were just like, no, he has these pink, you know, playing cards with superpower energy beams and stuff. Like that's what I wanted, and I loved it. So Superman looks very promising. Let's get into another thing I have been dying to talk about and I was excited for a long time. Andor Season 2. Timestamps below. I will make sure I don't spoil anything, and non-spoilers. Let's talk Andor Season 2. Andor Season 2 is a drama set in the Star Wars universe. It is directed by Ariel Kilman, Giannis Metz, and Alonso Ruiz Palacios. This season is written by Tony Gilroy, Beau Willimon, Dan Gilroy, and Tom Bissell. Reviews are extremely positive. 98% on Rotten Tomatoes with an 86% audience score, 92 on Metacritic. Just astounding reviews across the board for Season 2. Season 1 had extremely high reviews as well, so there was a lot of pressure going into Season 2, but so far it is just universal acclaim. A synopsis of Andor, the story of rebel spy Cassian Andor's formative years of the rebellion and his difficult missions for the cause. The show stars Diego Luna as Cassian Andor, first introduced actually 10 years ago in Rogue One, Adria Arjona as Bix Colleen, Denise Goh as Deidre Miro, Faye Marseille as Vel Sartha, Elizabeth Dulau as Clea Markey, Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen Rael, Ben Miles as Tay Kolma, Kyle Soller as Cyril Karn, Varadu Sethu as Simta Kaz, Alan Tudyk as K2SO, Ben Mendelsohn returns as Krennic, Anton Lesser as Major Partagaz, Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma. My god, she is good this season. We'll talk about it. Mohamed Ben Amour as Wilman, and literally so many others. It's a ginormous cast, a fantastic cast. Let's get into my initial thoughts. Let's not beat around the bush here. We have once again witnessed history with Andor. If you thought Season 1 was perfect like myself, I absolutely loved Season 1. Buckle in, folks, because oh my god, Season 2 left me bewildered. I was a mess emotionally. Holy moly, this show. Oh my god. Like, I'm actually speechless about how good Season 2 of Andor was. Let's jump into the performances right away, because Diego Luna as Cassian Andor, I really cannot emphasize how how special Cassian Andor is to me and how much I love Diego Luna in the Star Wars universe. He's like almost another kind of Han Solo, of this rebel guy who, you know, in Rogue One, I've watched that movie a few times and I really love Rogue One. He almost does seem like Han Solo, where he's hesitant to be a part of this cause, or maybe he's just in it for himself. And same with even the start of season 1 of Andor, but season 2, oh my god, I would protect Cassian Andor with my life. He takes on so much more of a leadership role, and I just love seeing his evolution as a character and how he gets to where he is in Rogue One as well. They do some insane stuff with him in this show, and just the journey they take him on is absolutely wonderful. Diego Luna deserves to be nominated, at least nominated, for every television acting award. I mean, in episode 1, just the way he treats this another officer that's in this hidden base with him, and they're another rebel that's undercover, and they're like, oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to ask you questions. And he's like, you're risking your life. You can ask me whatever you want. And you can just see how much compassion there is from Cassian Andor. But also, I think Diego Luna, every interview I watch with him, he seems like such a down-to-earth, sympathetic, and just nice human being. And so much of that plays into his role that you feel like he really does care about other people. All the way to, he has a monologue in the final episode. I was sobbing. Oh my god, just fantastic. Then we have Adria Arjona as Bix. They take her as a character on this wild journey in season 2. Her character arc in season 1 is absolutely devastating and just heartbreaking. Season 2, they have so much dark stuff they do with her, but then they sort of do a lot of really fun stuff and interesting, inventive things of letting her have a lot more agency in her life that I really appreciated. Adria Arjona is just a fantastic actress. Like, she gives probably the best performance of her career in this. I loved her in Blink Twice, but I think in this, she is doing so much, and there's such a complex nature to it. And obviously, I can't spoil anything, so I really do want to be careful, but I thought she was fantastic this season. Same with Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma. I think it's very interesting playing a character that already exists. Like, Mon Mothma is in all of the original trilogy, and I wasn't aware before this, or actually maybe I did know this, but she was actually cut from Revenge of the Sith. All of her scenes were cut out. So when Rogue One came up, she got to play Mon Mothma, obviously, and I think she was great in Rogue One, and obviously they were going to have her back for Andor. Season 2, she just steps it up as a leader. Like, I know she's a senator, and in season 1, I really enjoyed all the Mon Mothma stuff, but they really do pull even more focus onto her in season 2, and it feels very like the walls are closing in on her almost, and she develops different kinds of relationships and working relationships. Some fall apart, some develop in different ways, and I just think Genevieve O'Reilly is just so fantastic. You've probably seen the gif or a video of her dancing at her daughter's wedding. Absolute crash out her character has in the season, and then what they do with her to get her eventually to Yavin, and where we see her in Rogue One, because obviously we know where this ends up in Rogue One. I think they absolutely nailed it with Mon Mothma, and just adding so much more depth to Mon Mothma. Like, now you can watch the original trilogy, and because, you know, Andor's obviously canon, you can be like, wow, that's crazy how that character is now that, and you can see all the things that character has been through. Stellan Skarsgård, my god, great addition to the Star Wars universe. What an actor to put into this sci-fi world, and obviously he's great as, you know, the Baron in Dune. Well, I love him in his little rebel outfits, and then also as his public persona as the art dealer. Like, he's pretty much playing two roles, because he's playing someone that's being a spy, and he has to kind of have this public facing persona where he's this goofy art dealer that's like, oh yes, let's all drink champagne and hang out, and then in private he's all gravelly and I pray for a sunset I never, and all that stuff. And it's just really great, and they give us a lot more background on his character this season, which was fascinating. And same with his relationship with Clea, who's played by Elizabeth Dulau, who I don't think I've seen anything else she's been. Apparently she was in Wicked. I don't know if that's true, but she is so good in this season as well. Same with Denise Go as Supervisor Dedra Miro. My god, the places they take her and Cyril, who is played by Kyle Soller. I just think the performances are so strong in that relationship, and kind of the different positions on the spectrum of the Empire and where people can position themselves. But okay, I need to move on from the performances because there's a lot of story stuff that we want to talk about. Let's talk about the story of season 2 of Andor. I thought the direction they took it this season, fantastic. And obviously it is a shorter story because it was supposed to be 5 seasons, but Tony Gilroy didn't want to do this show for 20 years of his life, so he shrunk it down to 2 seasons. So every 3 episodes this season was kind of an arc because we got 3 episodes a week, which we'll talk about that release schedule in a little bit. But the direction they took the story, the chase is still on for Andor, which I guess the Empire calls him Axis, right? Or Access. They're chasing for him that he is this rebel spy. Or is that what they call Luthen, who's this rat for the rebels? But anyways, I really loved the direction they take this because, you know, they move a lot more into the development of the rebels this season and the growing chokehold that the Empire has. And honestly, there's just massive changes that our characters go through from episode 1 to episode 12. Very different people from the start of the season to the end of the season, but the story never felt shrunk down or rushed. I think that just shows how strong the writing is. It's genuinely some of the best writing on television that I've ever witnessed. Like, it's tackling so much in the Star Wars universe that, you know, people coming from outside of the Star Wars background maybe could be clumsy with it, but the fact that they do so well with it and make it so, it feels so Star Wars. Like, it genuinely just feels so in this universe. Make it as universal as possible. Every aspect is Star Wars, and yet they're attaching so much real life politics and emotions and real life scenarios into this world. You have to cut out 3 seasons of a television show and say, no, we're going to end it in 2. Well, we have like 5 other years to write in. That's a huge task. And the fact that obviously, like a lot of other television shows, different episodes were written by different writers, and yet it feels so streamlined and thematically coherent. And obviously they're a writing team, but still, like, even having different directors for different episodes, because sometimes you do have these different directors come in on a television show and you can be like, oh wow, that episode felt very different tonally. And yet Ariel Kilman did, I think, 7 of the episodes or 8 of the episodes, like quite a few of them this season, and fantastically directed. Everyone who directed this season really just knocks it out of the park, makes it feel very intense, spy, espionage, and that's what I really, really love. And that's what I loved about Rogue One as well. This is everyone that's being a spy and it's espionage, and we don't need all of these lightsabers and a bunch of hundreds of Jedis and stuff like that. Like, I don't need the Dave Filoni stuff being thrown around, which apparently this was sort of a rumor that Kathleen Kennedy and Tony Gilroy really had to fight for Andor, and there may have been some pushback from Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau and sort of the other side of Star Wars. So Tony Gilroy had this to say about Kathleen Kennedy. She has protected the show and protected me. When we started challenging Kathy just kept saying yes. Tony said, oh, I'm going to put the first scene in a brothel. And she said, okay. I'm going to have 2 cops killed. She said, okay. We want the production designer from Chernobyl. She said, okay, good idea. She backed our play and got everything that we were doing. We've been through everything, she and I, on this, all the good and the bad. There's no show without her. For all the shit that she takes online, it's just insane. This show exists because she forced it to happen. What a tough job she has, man. Look, Kathleen Kennedy, as much as people hate her, she has an insane filmography of stuff that she has produced. And I could understand that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau and like the other, you know, side of the spectrum of Star Wars where it's all just like, oh, well, what if we had that one random character from the Rebels episode come in and they, you know, we have the shaky cam Jedi fighting for 20 minutes with zero story and the show goes nowhere. Whereas Andor is like, no, let's make prestige television, 0 Jedis. Not really a spoiler, but the word Force is mentioned once. That is it. And when they do use it, it's perfect. And this isn't just to come down on Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, because I think the great thing about Star Wars, we can get great childish shows like Skeleton Crew, that I absolutely loved Skeleton Crew, and then we can get shows like Andor. There's such a wide variety within the Star Wars universe of we can make things for everyone and different audiences, but fans need to realize that not everything in Star Wars is going to be for you, and you don't need to really watch everything. You know, people could skip the action Acolyte. People could skip The Mandalorian even, and you would be okay. So I don't know. Shout out Kathleen Kennedy, shout out Tony Gilroy for both of them just being so frontal of like, yeah, people in Lucasfilm didn't want this to happen. And the writing takes on some very mature and dark subject matter this season that we haven't seen in Star Wars before. Like, it's insane that Star Wars theory guy, he, after episode 1 or the first 3 episodes, was like, I'm done covering Star Wars, because some of the themes they take on, the fact that they talk about drug use, talk about sexual assault, they talk about genocide, they take on a lot of very dark things this season, and the way they do it is so nuanced and emotionally intelligent and really just plays out into a scary mirror to our own world. Every episode you could apply to the Trump administration, you could apply to the war on Ukraine, you could apply it to Palestine, you could apply it to small rebellions across the world. I love that we are getting all of these very real things, and I know people are like, oh, don't make my entertainment political. Star Wars has literally always been political. George Lucas, how many times has he said in the original films, the rebels represented the Viet Cong and the Empire was America and colonization? Or even in the prequels, they talk about tariffs and trade wars and all of this stuff and like the growing imperialism. How accurate is that to the world we're living in right now with all these tariffs and trade routes and evil people being in power of, you know, trade and stuff like that? Same with Andor. So many episodes on this show, like they even use the word visas, and 10 years ago, maybe I would have thought like, ew, I don't want to hear the word visa in Star Wars. That's so strange. But I'm like, yeah, fuck it. Why wouldn't they have visas? The themes they take on are a lot of continuing themes from season 1, but obviously colonial and imperialism, but they take it in a much different sort of direction. I also really love how they handled trauma this season, but with Bix, because of how she was tortured in season 1. A lot of that is shown in the trailers. I also think they have this interesting exploration of like predestination and fate and sort of altruism, that maybe there are people that are born to sacrifice and just do things for the greater good, like Cassian Andor, or they even talk about queerness and queer relationships in this, which I was like, oh shit, people are going to throw their arms in the air and get all mad, but I thought the relationship that they explore in the show was fantastic. Obviously, as I said, ethnic cleansing and genocide, extra military violence and imperialism, and how those two play together with rape and sexual assault being in this show. It's such an important part of imperialism that if we're going to talk about imperialism with, you know, Star Wars and within this galaxy, there's going to be extra military violence. That is literally what I wrote my dissertation about. If we're going to write this mature show, that's going to be part of it. Sorry. Like, people can't just be like, oh, well, I want a super serious Star Wars show, but I want all of the real life stuff to just be cut out. Like, that's not, you can't have both. So, like I said, props to Tony Gilroy, props to all of the writers, props to Kathleen Kennedy and everyone that bet on Andor and said, no, let's do this. Let's just go fully for it. And I think the thesis of Andor all comes from Nemec's manifesto. And that is what this inspiring message is supposed to be to fans and viewers of the show and people just in life in general. I'll read a bit of it to you guys, but Nemec's manifesto from season 1, which they use a couple of times in this season. He says, there will be times when the struggle seems impossible. I know this already. Alone, unsure, dwarfed by the scale of the enemy. Remember this, freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. And remember this, the imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks, it leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that, and know this, the day will come when all of these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance, will have flooded the banks of the Empire's authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this, try. Everyone in the world who is fighting for democracy against fascism, that is just an amazing message to share to all of American listeners that listen to this and you feel like your country is falling apart under the administration that's currently in charge. Remember this, just try. That is all you can do. Everyone in the world that feels like fascism and is on the rise and maybe democracy, and I mean, Mon Mothma's quote this season about the distance between what is true and what is said has become an abyss. She has a quote like that in her speech that just blew my frickin' mind, and I won't tell you what part of the season that comes in because that's a spoiler, but let's talk about maybe the 3 episode release and the shrinking down of seasons a little bit more. 3 episodes a week. Does it work? I think there is part of me that can see why they decided on 3 episodes a week, because every little arc they're going through is 3 episodes. Like the first 3 episodes to the next 3 episodes, there's a time jump of a year, and every 3 episodes we have a time jump. So I understand why that's maybe why they were like, well, we should bunch them together so there's no confusion of what year we are. But I think maybe if you had stretched it to 12 weeks and you just had an episode per week, it would not only just help the viewing experience and creating more online discourse, but I think it would also help your award season run, and the fact that it was such a huge monument of online discourse, more people would be pushing for it and advocating for it when the for your consideration stuff pops up around award time inevitably. And also just like, this is one of the best things that Star Wars has ever done. It's the best show that Disney Plus has published by far. I love The Bear, but this is flawless television. And if you have a special project like Andor, I would be stretching and caring about the release as much as I can and be so protective over it. But the fact that it was Tony Gilroy's decision makes it okay. It wasn't the streamer that was pushing him of like, well, we just want to dump it all at once like a Ted Sarandos would. And the fact they shrunk it from 5 seasons to 2 seasons, there's a lot of ground to cover, like I said. So with those time jumps, maybe it might get a little bit confusing or people forget where they are over 12 weeks. But I think 12 weeks of Andor just would have been so much fun. Like last year or 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Jesus Christ, it's been forever since season 1. I think week to week of Andor last time, there was so much fun discussion, and people just every week, like on my social media, it felt like more people and more people were hopping on the Andor bandwagon, and it was so much fun. A lot like The Pit, where every week it felt like more people were tuning in, or people like myself, when there was 2 episodes left, were like, well, now I got to catch up because I want to be a part of the last 2 weeks of discussion. I think you could have had that with Andor. I don't think it means there won't be any like award season runs or things like that. I think it will get nominations. Whether the award seasons or the award shows are willing to reward a Star Wars program, who knows? But this is just like A+ prestige TV that you would see on HBO. Like, that's how good I think this is. As for leading into Rogue One, that's what I was a little bit worried about, of like, is it gonna feel rushed and shoehorned, trying to get everyone into the emotional state that we see them in? And I could not have predicted the journey that we would take to get to Rogue One, because my God, the last 10 minutes of the series finale, I was sobbing. I was shaken to my core how broken down we are going into Rogue One. But having said that, it actually ends, without any spoilers, on a very hopeful and uplifting message in some ways. Like, I'm glad it wasn't just gloom and doom for sure. And so I think they fully nailed it leading into Rogue One. And I honestly, my brother texted me this as well last night super late when him and my sister-in-law watched it. He was like, oh God, I just want to watch Rogue One now. But it was like midnight and he has to work today, obviously. That was the same for me the other night. When I finished it on Tuesday, I was like, I just want to watch Rogue One so bad right now. And now I think I've seen a lot of other people say this as well, and I feel very much the same, that watching Rogue One is going to be a very different experience now, and I'm going to care a lot more about Cassian Andor. But let's get into my 2 stars and a wish for Andor Season 2. Star number 1, the performances are just legitimately astonishing. It is some of my favorite acting in the Star Wars universe by so far, but honestly some of my favorite acting in television shows, that they can be so serious about the subject matter and the Star Wars universe and treat it with such respect while giving such amazing performances. I just have so much admiration for all the performers. Like people like Alistair Petrie, he has posted on Instagram multiple times how Star Wars, 1977 Star Wars, he's from the UK, so he saw it in 78, was like his first big theater experience. So when he was called 10 years ago to be like, hey, would you do this small role in a Star Wars film? He was like, I honestly, if I got one line, I would be happy. And it's just so much fun to see these actors that are genuinely passionate about Star Wars get these roles, and him playing a great character like General Draven is just so much fun. My second star, they never force fan service or annoying big Star Wars characters like shoehorned into the show. It's so limited to our world. Orson Krennic is hardly in season 2, which I appreciated, and when he is involved, I loved what he has to do. As for my wish, weekly episodes, I think that just would have been my only wish. I wish it was 12 weeks long. Think you could have made a better award show run, online presence week to week, but look, overall, I genuinely don't have any criticisms for season 2. I think this is a flawless season of television, just like season 1. I'm going to miss this show so much. My appreciation for Rogue One is just through the roof. This was seriously a once-in-a-lifetime television show. If you haven't watched Andor, go watch it, especially if you are a Star Wars fan who's on the fence. I'd rate season 2 5 out of 5. Let's hop into spoilers. All right, spoilers for Andor Season 2. Let's start with Bix. Her character arc throughout Season 2 is sort of mesmerizing, how she goes from this broken down, traumatized, just shell of a human and almost gets raped in Episode 2 and has to kill the guy that's trying to rape her. And it's just, she has one of the wildest character arcs in this show that I did not expect. And I really loved how they treated her addiction issues in this show. Like Luthen, when Cassian is away, comes to check on her, and he's not like, I don't know, berating her or anything like that. He's genuinely coming to see how she is because he knows she's an important part of the rebellion. And he even says like, yeah, I used it for a while, like to help me go to sleep. And, eventually you have to lose it because you have to move on with your life and get back in the fight. It's wild how rock bottom she hits in this show. Like that one part where she's like sleeping on the Star Wars beanbag almost type thing, take out food everywhere, and she's watching some trashy reality show that looks like The View or some kind of talk show. And by the end of the season, I loved that they ended the show. She's the final shot of the finale, right? Where it's her holding her child with Cassian and she's just smiling, content in a field. And it's sort of implied that when all of this rebellion stuff is said and done and they finally won, that she wanted Cassian to come back, but she knew that's probably not going to happen because of his greater purpose, and that's where that predestination comes in. And I just love how her entire existence in the show isn't just tied to Cassian. She is very much her own character with her own issues, and it's not just like she's a girl and she has her own girl issues or whatever. Like, it's like genuinely hardcore rebellion issues that any character could have, and she's just so well written. And I like that they end the show with her just having a happy life. I did not want Bix to die this entire season, and I was like, if they kill Bix, I'm going to be so depressed. I actually like that she was back out there and she got her life back together. She got the life that she wanted, and she makes this greater sacrifice. And I think that also just shows her as a hero of this show too. She knew that if she stayed with Cassian, and especially she left because she was pregnant, I think that was the biggest part, because the Force healer puts his hand on her belly in that moment. Like, that was the conversation of the show where I sort of clued in like, oh, I think Bix is about to bail on Cassian and make him stay with the rebellion. Honestly, just feels so necessary. Like, sure, you would want a happy ending where they end up together and it's this magical happy ending, and oh, Cassian didn't actually die in Rogue One. He went back and saw his son and his wife, but unfortunately not. And I really just love some of the more tender moments that we get between them throughout the season as well, where, he comes back from a mission and they just talk about like, let's go for a walk tomorrow and like, let's just live a normal life. And Cassian is constantly fighting to just live this normal life and let's leave this all behind. And sure, there are moments where Bix wants that too, but she knows that the rebellion is so important. So their love life and their relationship is so complex and so well written. I loved every minute of it, and it was just maybe my favorite element of the show. Now let's move into Mon Mothma. The whole first three episodes are about her daughter's wedding to the guy that's also very rich and funding the rebellion, and it's about Tay being unhappy with the investments that he's losing on because of the rebellion, and it's sort of Mon Mothma crashing out at her own daughter's wedding. But I really liked how complex they wrote her, and that she does, what her mother never dared to do, and now she understands why her mother was drunk at her own wedding, because she realized like how much status and all of this public persona doesn't matter. Just fight for what you want. And I I really loved it, and she knows that she has to get her hands dirty and that this could all come crumbling down. And again, another character arc where I really loved the low depths that they took her, and showing that how much the rebellion is really a struggle. They're doing this all in hiding for the first 9 episodes of the season, or 8 episodes, and then she has that public declaration speech against Palpatine and, pretty much declares that she is a rebel in some ways and has to escape the planet with Cassian. And that was also one of my favorite scenes, where we finally get to see our sort of 2 main heroes of the series, if you will, on screen together. But the whole wedding arc and the 3 episodes where Luthen's even there and we're slowly creeping towards like, oh, Tay may have to die here because he is going to blab and he is going to bring the whole thing down. And again, this season I think is really trying to point out small sacrifices for a greater good. All of our heroes are making these sacrifices that someone selfish would say, I can't do that because I care about myself more, but it's about making the small battles and winning the small battles and just devoting your life for a future. And, it's like Luthen's speech. You're fighting for a sunrise that you will never see. Whether it is Cassian, whether it's Luthen, whether it's his daughter Clea, everyone is fighting for a future that they may never get to experience. And that's what I absolutely love about this kind of reflection on the me versus we generations that we have in real life, that some generations that are alive right now only care about themselves. We're trying to fight for more universal things in our lives and protection of everyone equally. And that's kind of what this show is about, is the rebellion as well, that we deserve protection for everyone. And these little battles that you are making by speaking up are fighting for a future that will help everyone and not just yourself. And it's just like Gorman as well, the locals that are fighting. And I believe Gorman is based off of the French Revolution and World War II, of the Nazi occupation of France. And I really love that they bring this kind of French dialect into the universe. One of the characters who plays kind of the local council guy that kills Cyril, he was in Inglourious Bastards, actually. I recognized him, and he's a German actor, I believe. But I really loved the Gorman arc. I think it's 6 episodes total that we get in Gorman, or is it 4, 5, 6? But you get like a little bit more where the Empire is building the armory. We see Cassian, we see Wilman, we see even Cyril helping the local rebellion, but Cyril is a double agent, so he's helping them, but he's really doing it for the sake of the Empire in some ways. But I really loved how they tackled the Gorman massacre and showing the slow building pressure of imperialism, and that's where they tackle ethnic cleansing and genocide. And the fact that they just used the word genocide in Mon Mothma's speech, I think took a lot of guts. A Disney executive very easily could have just stepped up and said, nope, don't use the G word, we don't want that in our show, but they use it in this, and I absolutely just appreciated that we're not continuing this cycle of people being scared to say words like sexual assault or rape or genocide, and people being afraid of using these words on social media or whatever because, oh, well, I don't want to lose views and be censored. It's like, but you're doing a disservice and you're not honoring the people that are suffering from these things by censoring these words. And everything they do with the Empire this season is very poignant, how the Empire, it doesn't even respect its own people. Like, if you mess up and just because you worked for the Empire, they're not going to protect you. We see Dedra is sent to the prison planet that Cassian escaped from in season 1. Cyril is killed. Partagaz kills himself while listening to Nemec's manifesto. I love that Nemec talks about the Empire is all about control and chaos, and them slowly realizing that there is this rebellion all throughout the universe, and they fight against chaos in their eyes, which is people having individual freedoms, because they want everyone almost to be the exact same and streamlined. And it's just so much interesting tackling and eating up of their own. Like, the Empire is almost cannibalistic in a sense that it will eat itself for the sake of further control, and even though it's not healthy to eat your own, there's no freedom of expression, or if you make mistakes, there's no forgiveness in the Empire. And I just really loved how it depicts fascism in this show. And everyone has a very interesting relationship with Krennic and Grand Moff Tarkin and Palpatine himself. And I love that we never see Palpatine, we never see Grand Moff Tarkin. We never get any big character showing up and making some fan servicey cameo. The only one that I was shocked they included him, Bail Organa, who they actually recast Bail Organa with Benjamin Bratt this season. Amazing choice. He just nails it as a younger Bail Organa. Obviously, the original actor is just much older now, and I think he's very busy as well or something like that and couldn't come back. So a fantastic choice, and he has some great lines like tear the shit out of this place when he's talking about Mon Mothma's speech that she's about to give. But also, he is the only one in the show in season 2 that says the word force. He tells Cassian Andor in the finale, may the force be with you. And that's when I got so choked up and got goosebumps. I was like, holy shit, what a time to pull that out. And that's, again, they are so restrained with fan service. We don't see R2-D2. We don't see C-3PO show up. Honestly, I've come to hate C-3PO a little bit because anytime he shows up, it just feels so fan servicey. So it's nice to move away from the forceful things, no pun intended, of like the original trilogies. I'm like, oh, how can we milk it to really push for this? And let's end with talking about Luthen and the spoilers, because episode 11 and 10 it's all about Luthen's death because Dedra catches him and knows he is a rebel spy. So Clea actually has to kill Luthen, and we get this bottle episode, or like this flashback episode, where we see how they met. Clea growing up as Luthen's new daughter and them sort of living this rebel life, where we even get get a scene on live action Naboo, which is just so cool that they blow up a bridge on Naboo. And it's just, I was really blown away how much I have just come to love Clea in season 2 as the one that's pulling all the strings under Luthen, who, Luthen's a great character and is in control of so much, but I really loved their sort of strained relationship a little bit in season 2, that they are not perfect together and they have their own issues. That flashback really added so much emotional weight. My God, the actress of Clea is just amazing, and Stellan Skarsgård was fantastic in this show. They even do some de-aging on him in episode 11 that I thought looked fantastic, and I was shocked how well it all kind of pulls together in the end. Is this the best Star Wars thing to ever come out? Maybe. Honestly, Andor, just quality-wise and writing-wise, obviously Empire Strikes Back is my favorite Star Wars movie ever, but Andor just feels like this other beast entirely and ties so well into the original trilogy, and it's just easily the best prequel thing we've gotten, for sure. I don't know, it's just so much great stuff that we could talk about in Andor for multiple hours, but overall, I just want to say this was such a perfect show, and I'm so curious where they could go from here. Tony Gilroy has very clearly said he is done with Star Wars. He has other things that he's moving on to, like this cellist thing with Oscar Isaac, and I don't blame him because it takes up 10 years of his life already with 2 Star Wars things since he started in Rogue One-ish. So, I don't know, maybe we get a Clea series of her involvement with the Rebellion. I would be down with that. That's kind of cool. But as for now, goodbye, Andor. I will miss you very much. Season 2 was a 5 out of 5 for me, but let's move into what else I watched. All right, what else I watched? This week I have 3 movies, 6 shows, and 2 books to talk about. Let's start with the books, of course. I read my first New Avengers story last weekend, starting with The New Avengers Illuminati. Bendis's writing of The New Avengers is so good. So the Illuminati story that I read is this one shot from 2006 to 2008 that they were sort of putting out issues every once in a while between these big events like Secret Invasion and Civil War. So it's Reed Richards, Namor, Black Bolt, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Charles Xavier. So it's the New Avengers Illuminati. We kind of got a version of them in Multiverse of Madness, but this is like the OG Illuminati team, and they're sort of secret Avengers that they're all working together and really get together when the Earth is desperate as well, which I like. But what a fun story. I just love how rude everyone is, and everyone has such a bad ego in it, and yet we see like some really interesting takes on masculinity and like emotional availability of men, and that they're talking about how lucky they are to be married and how lucky they are to have families. And Clea leaves Doctor Strange at one point in the story, and that's when we really get this interesting discussion of Tony telling them, like, you guys don't know how lucky you are to not be single and how lucky you are to have support and support systems as superheroes, because it is a very lonely experience. And I also loved how much it was blending Infinity Stones, the Skrulls, all the different Avenger stories that we've known to love. It was just a lot of fun. Let's move into TV. All right, well, Conan O'Brien Must Go came back this week. He started with Spain, traveling with Javier Bardem in Madrid, where he is from, and then moving around Spain a little bit to like some olive farms and stuff like that. It was a good start. I have to say the fans that he interacted with were very stiff and didn't really do a lot of crazy stuff with him or want to seem like, or seem like they have, ideas of fun stuff that we could do. Like when he went to Iceland or Norway last season and he was in that rock band thing, or he went to the metal concert, that was so much fun. And last season, a lot of the fans were just willing to really improv and kind of play ball with his sense of humor, versus this season, episode 1 was very stiff, but I liked the stuff he did with Jordan Schlansky on the olive farm. He did a lot of fun stuff with Javier Bardem, who is just so funny. Javier Bardem is hilarious, and he was really going full silliness with Conan, which I think is just, it's great. So I'm excited to watch it every Thursday, and episode 1 was a strong start. Then I caught Hacks season 4, episode 6. I said last week I'm sort of getting a little bit bored of Hacks because we've moved into late night, and as much as I think this episode was, once again, they, mend the bridge between Ava and Deborah, I loved Ava's breakdown this episode. I thought Hannah Einbinder gave an amazing performance. Her quote about, I want to die, but I'm not going to kill myself, made me like genuinely gut laugh. Much more a return to form. Disappointed we didn't have Jimmy and Kayla, but The Last of Us, season 2, episode 5. Dear God, Ellie is a savage. For people that were complaining, oh, Ellie doesn't even seem angry about Joel's death, I think it's because it was like this slow burn that as soon as she met up with someone from Abby's team again, we were going to see crazy Ellie come out. And as much as I also, like, I'm not trying to give, shit to people that haven't been enjoying the season. That's fine. If you don't like it, that's totally fine because you're such like a game purist or whatever. I get it when it must be weird seeing like your favorite video game of all time adapted. But for me, as just a show fan, I did get a little bit frustrated that like, okay, but get back to the revenge on Abby's team. They heard my calling because dear God, Ellie went full on psycho and I loved her turn in character. It was a really strong episode. In 2 weeks, we'll have a full review of season 2 of The Last of Us because we only have a couple episodes left. So I'm very excited for that. But as for The Rehearsal, season 2, episode 4, Kiss Me, crazy episode. Like he's just breaking barriers, talking about actors and intimacy in scenes and how, we just need an excuse to indulge on our impulses and like maybe we can be ourselves when we're given an opportunity. Nathan Fielder every week is breaking down something crazy and I just love the variety and The Rehearsal that he can do an episode like last week where it's so crazy and weird versus this week seems much more straightforward, but the things he's pointing out are so mind-blowing and like so true. But also the people he finds, like Colin, right? The guy that he was helping the pilot. When he kissed the girl on the cheek, it was one of the hardest things I've had to watch. It was so cringy and unbelievable. I feel so bad for Colin. Like you can just tell he's a guy struggling with confidence and oh man, it was tough, but it was just such a good episode and Nathan Fielder just breaks my brain every week. Finally, for TV shows, Survivor, season 48, episode 12. Shaheen is voted out. Finally, a good player and a big player is voted out. Now, I think, honestly, what's going to happen? The finale's next week. 5 people left, and it's such a boring group going into the finale. Props to Camilla and Kyle actually flipping finally, even though Camilla voted Mitch last night. She did not flip and vote Shaheen, even though it was her idea with Kyle. I was surprised, but clearly she's going to go for Kyle next episode. As for movies, I have 3 movies that I watched this week, starting with Lilo and Stitch, the original from 2002, because the new one's coming out next week. I haven't seen it since probably 2006, 2007, something like that, and I just didn't remember anything about it, but oh my God, the movie is kind of traumatizing. First of all, I just want to praise the animation and how cared for and like hand drawn and just so artistically creative it feels, and just I love watching things where you can feel the care that was put into them, and that's what I get from Lilo and Stitch. But also just the story is so just pulls me down. Like Ohana means family, and Stitch wandering into the forest and being like, I'm lost. This was a week of sobbing because I cried so much watching Lilo and Stitch. It was genuinely fantastic. I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. I don't think it's perfect because I honestly think you could have put another 10 minutes in, like just stretch it out a little bit more with a bit more of Stitch, but I really loved it. I'm very mentally prepared for Disney to ruin it next week. Then I watched Mission Impossible Fallout in preparation for obviously the movie we're going to be reviewing next week, but also my May YouTube video, which have I said what my May YouTube video is going to be yet? I don't know. Maybe I'll say it next week, but I watched it, 5 stars, amazing movie. I'll save my thoughts for my YouTube video this month. Finally, the last movie I watched this week, Friendship. I saw it in an early access screening on Monday night, sold out screening pretty much, went with my buddy Zach. We're both huge Tim Robinson fans. Like, I Think You Should Leave. I've watched I Think You Should Leave probably 10 times over. Everything Tim Robinson does, I watch front to back multiple times. He's the funniest guy. What a crazy, crazy, stupid movie. It was pretty much a 97-minute I Think You Should Leave sketch. I loved it. The story actually wasn't that dumb. Like, I thought, oh, they actually do have like an idea of what this story could be, and there's so many amazing gags and amazing lines that maybe if another actor said them, they wouldn't be that funny, but because it's Tim Robinson putting his own weird spin on it, it's just hilarious. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was genuinely a fun time at the movies. I was belly laughing the whole time. It was also fun seeing it in a sold out theater where everyone was chuckling throughout the movie, and it was just such a good time seeing a comedy with a pumped up crowd. A lot of fun. I have a ton of stuff I want to watch before next week's episode. I'm probably going to rewatch Mission Impossible 1 to 4. I want to rewatch Rogue One. I want to go see that Weekend movie with Jenna Ortega and Barry Keoghan, Hurry Up Tomorrow. I've heard it's terrible, but yeah, that's been what else I watched. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 70 and/or season 2. I hope that was a coherent review. Sometimes with these big projects that I'm so excited for and I loved so much about it, it's so hard to get all your thoughts out and so many reasons why you loved it. But as always, please rate and review the show 5 stars on all of your streaming platforms wherever you get great shows like Watcher of All Things, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Acast. We are an Acast produced show. Give it 5 stars, drop a rating underneath and a positive review. It might even be read on the show. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your work group chat, share it with your local bus driver, wherever. If you were on the YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, comment what you thought of Andor Season 2. What are you watching this week? Are you pumped for the new Mission Impossible? All that good stuff. And stay tuned for a new YouTube video coming Friday, May 30th. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can email me, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, and follow me on social media. Instagram and Threads are at Watcher of All Things. The TikTok page is at watcher.of.all.things. My personal Letterboxd account is KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Follow me on there. Drop a comment under one of my reviews that you found me through the show. I will follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, your mission, should you choose to accept it, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. I am so fucking excited. It's going to be so much fun, guys. I cannot tell you how much I love Mission Impossible. It's my favorite franchise, ongoing franchise of all time. I am so excited for next week. It's going to be a very fun one. But as for now, thank you again for listening, for all the kind words and love. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.